Hi friends! A fellow designer recently asked me whether it was possible to set different line heights for different languages in code. And the answer is yes, it's quite easy to do so. The reason why you would want to do something like that is that, for example, while something like a line height 1.6 is considered a standard for languages such as English or Spanish, it may not necessarily apply to all languages. For example, when we have something like Japanese, you have much more compact and dense characters, and you may want to have more spacing between them. Or even for something like German, you have umlauts and the words tend to be longer. So something like 1.6 is just not sufficient enough. Anyway, the answer is yes, you can set different line heights for different languages, and we are going to do that with the help of language HTML attribute. So typically you would find the language attribute at the root of the HTML file. Sometimes you can have it added right into your paragraph tags or span tags if you happen to use bits of text from other language. Having this language attribute is also an accessibility requirement. So if you are checking your website and if you don't have this attribute set, any accessibility checker should call it out. For example, right now on my website, I have the language set to English. And if I run the accessibility checker, you can see that it's green over here, and it says that the language of the document or page element is identified. But if I were to remove this and run the accessibility checker again, you'll see that I have this arrow here, and it says that the language is missing. All right, so let's take a look at this blank demo file. So here I have 3 div elements, and then I have more or less the same paragraph in 3 different languages. One is English, second is German, and third is Japanese. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to add the language attribute to our div elements. So this one's going to be English. This one is German and Japanese. You can also get more specific by specifying the audience. So for example, if this is an American audience, you can also add US. And now that we have our language attribute set, we can target it in CSS. So in our CSS, we can write language. And then for our heading, the H2, we can do line height, let's say 1.2. And then for the paragraph, you can do line height 1.6. Then we can repeat the same thing for German. We could make it slightly bigger. And we could also make it slightly bigger for the paragraph. And we'll do the same thing for Japanese. So actually, when I was researching for this video, I was trying to find what would be a typical good line height for Japanese. And when I was looking at American websites that had a Japanese version, most of the time the line height would match the same as English. So it would be like 1.6, maybe 1.7. But then when I started looking at the Japanese first websites, there I saw line heights that were like 2 or 2.2, which is how I arrived at this number. All right, so this is how you would set your line heights. Something that you can do is first, you can definitely have the default for something like English, Italian, Spanish. They would probably have the same line heights for headings and paragraphs. So if that also happens to be most of your audience and you just want that to be the default, we can remove this wrapper. And so these values are going to apply to any language that's not specified below. Another enhancement that you can do is apply CSS variables. So for example, at the start of your file, you can write HTML. And here we're going to define a couple of variables. First one is leading type for our headings, and then leading relaxed for our paragraphs. So these are going to be our default values. And by the way, I'm using the Tailwind naming convention here. And there are obviously more variables that you can have, something like leading normal and leading loose. And so what I'm going to do now is to use these variables in place of just assigning a static number here. And for our languages, we can remove the stuff. And then I'm actually gonna bring this to the top of the page. And here we can assign new values to the variables. So incorporating variables makes the code much more manageable and easier to understand, especially as your project grows in complexity. All right, so I hope this was helpful. Thank you for watching, and until next time, bye.